working to connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles. You're watching ASEAN in Focus on tonight's headlines. Malacanang has revealed the location of the 4 additional facilities to be shared with U.S. military forces, the Philippine-U.S. EDSA, or the Philippine-U.S. Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement. Leonardo DiCaprio was in Washington today not to press lawmakers on his environmental causes or to film another blockbuster hit, but rather to testify in a political corruption trial featuring a 90s hip-hop star and a disgraced Malaysian financier, Prash Michel. The Asian Development Bank raised its 2023 growth forecast for developing Asia today after China's abrupt loosening of COVID restrictions and reopening of its borders brightened the region's prospects. And China is warning today that an upcoming meeting between Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen and U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy will further damage relations between Beijing and Washington. McCarthy, a Republican, earlier confirmed he would meet President Tsai in California, defying warnings from China that he was playing with fire. First in our news, Malacanang has revealed the location of the 4 additional facilities to be shared with U.S. military forces, the Philippine-U.S. Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement. 3 of the sites are in the northern Philippines, including a naval base and airport in Cagayan Province and an army camp in the neighboring province of Isabela. The naval base at Cagayan Santa Ana is about 400 kilometers from Taiwan. Another site will be an air base on Balabac Island off the southern tip of Palawan Island near the South China Sea. So it's mostly in the northern Luzon area, which are close to Taiwan, Okinawa, and southern China. The longtime treaty allies agreed in February to expand cooperation in strategic areas of the Philippines as they seek to counter China's growing assertiveness over self-governed Taiwan and the building of Chinese bases in the South China Sea. The 2014 Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, known as EDCA, gave U.S. forces access to 5 Philippine bases. It was expanded to 9, but the locations of the 4 additional bases were withheld until Monday while the government consulted with local officials. The Presidential Communications Office said in a statement that the 4 sites had been assessed by the Philippine military and deemed suitable and mutually beneficial. It said the bases would also be used for humanitarian and relief operations during disasters.
Facts are very clear that the U.S. has been strengthening its military deployment in the region, driven by a zero-sum mentality in pursuit of selfish interests. This would only lead to more tensions and less peace and stability in the region. Regional countries need to think about what is truly suitable and mutually beneficial, so as to make a choice that serves regional peace and stability as well as their own interests.
Minister Anwar Ibrahim said that Malaysia was prepared to negotiate the South China Sea dispute with Beijing to safeguard the country's energy exploration efforts. Anwar, who was on a visit to Beijing, recently said the sensitive issue was raised at a meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping as Malaysia's state energy firm Petronas has its largest oil platform in the disputed area, as well as several exploration projects. I said, as a small country, we need the resources, oil and gas. We have to continue exploration projects, the Prime Minister said during a monthly speech to staff at the Prime Minister's office. But if the condition is that there must be negotiations, then we are ready to negotiate, he said. The Premier did not provide further details on the conversation with President Xi. Meanwhile, China responded as saying that it was willing to work with all parties concerned to maintain peace in the disputed South China Sea. Let's listen in.
China's position on the South China Sea issue is consistent and clear. We remain committed to handling the disputes through communication and consultation. China would like to work with all parties to jointly safeguard regional peace and stability.
While asserting their claims in the South China Sea, Chinese authorities in recent years have ramped up its development of artificial islands, including outfitting some with military facilities and runways. Regional nations have also accused Chinese vessels of harassing their fishing boats. In 2021, Malaysia summoned Beijing's envoy to the Southeast Asian country in protest after Chinese vessels entered its maritime economic zone in the disputed area, or the disputed sea. Earlier that year, it scrambled fighter jets to intercept 16 Chinese military aircraft that appeared off Borneo over the South China Sea. In tonight's other news, Leonardo DiCaprio was in Washington today not to press lawmakers on his environmental causes or to film another blockbuster hit, but rather to testify in a political corruption trial featuring a 90s hip-hop star and a disgraced Malaysian financier, Prash Michel. Now, Prash Michel is a member of the U.S. musical trio The Fugees and is facing charges for allegations of helping to secretly funnel money from Lau Taik Joe, the Malaysian businessman at the heart of the scandal, to influence U.S. politics. DiCaprio captivated the courtroom, telling the jury about parties thrown by Lau, extravagant affairs allegedly funded with money looted from Malaysia's sovereign wealth fund, known as One Malaysia Development Berhad, or 1MDB. The Titanic star is not accused of wrongdoing in what has become one of the biggest embezzlement cases in the world. The 48-year-old actor testified that Lau threw a multitude of lavish parties with many different people from all over the world on boats and at nightclubs, often with celebrities in attendance, sometimes including Michelle. Now, when Lau eventually expressed interest in financing DiCaprio's 2013 film, The Wolf of Wall Street, the actor's lawyers and a private detective looked into the Malaysian financier, who is also known as Joe Lau, and they ultimately gave a thumbs up on the deal. DiCaprio also accepted gifts from Lau for his environmental foundation. But in 2015, the actor said he cut ties with Lau after suspicions surfaced around his connection to the disappearance of billions of dollars from 1MDB's accounts. Lau, who is said to have fled to China and remains at large, allegedly used the 1MDB funds to subsidize his luxurious lifestyle, invest in DiCaprio's film, rub shoulders with the rich and famous, and influence politics. The Human Rights Watch is urging Bangladesh to suspend plans to repatriate Rohingya refugees to Myanmar. It also warned that conditions there would not be safe for the persecuted and stateless minority. A delegation from Myanmar's military regime traveled to Bangladesh this month to interview potential candidates for return and jumpstart a stalled repatriation scheme. But any return to Myanmar would put the lives and liberty of refugees at grave risk, according to the Human Rights Watch. Rohingya in the camps told HRW they were lied to, deceived, or otherwise coerced by Bangladesh administrators into meeting the Myanmar delegation. Some of the 15 refugees interviewed by the watchdog said they had been lured into the meetings on the understanding they were to discuss possible resettlement to a third country. Junta Chief Min Aung Hlaing, who has dismissed the Rohingya identity as imaginary, was head of the armed forces during the 2017 crackdown. The International Court of Justice is probing allegations of systematic rape, murder, and arson against Rohingya by Myanmar security forces. Rights groups have accused the junta of planning to orchestrate a token return of refugees to avoid the court's censure. Here in the country, the Bureau of Internal Revenue is urging the public to pay their annual income taxes ahead of the April 17 deadline. Through Revenue Memorandum Circular Number 32-2023, dated March 3, the BIR made the File and Pay Anywhere scheme, doing away with penalties imposed when filing in the wrong venue. Meanwhile, the circular states that taxpayers who are mandated to use the BIR's electronic filing and payment system shall file their AITRs electronically. They can pay the correct taxes due through the banks they are enrolled in. BIR Commissioner Romeo Lumagi Jr. said the policy was part of efforts to provide optimal services to taxpayers. Meanwhile, the commissioner also reminds the public not to use ghost receipts in their filings. Ghost receipts are fictitious receipts where transactions did not take place, and this results in the reduction of the income tax and value-added tax liabilities of the purchaser. Certified public accountants or CPA involved in these ghost receipts will suffer the revocation of their license plus imprisonment. The Asian Development Bank raised its 2023 growth forecast for developing Asia on Tuesday after China's abrupt loosening of COVID-19 restrictions and reopening of its borders brightened the region's prospects. The Philippine-based lender expects economic growth of a 4.8% this year, up from its 4.6% projection in December, and that compares with growth of 4.2% last year. Developing Asia refers to 46 members of the ADB stretching from Kazakhstan in Central Asia to the Cook Islands in the Pacific. China, the world's second largest economy, accounts for about half of the region's growth. It began to emerge in December from a strict zero-COVID strategy that hammered economic activity. An upcoming meeting between Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen and U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy will further damage relations between Beijing and Washington, China warned Monday. McCarthy, a Republican, earlier confirmed he would meet Tsai in California, defying warnings from China that he was playing with fire.
China firmly opposes the U.S.'s arrangement for Tsai Ing-wen's transit trip to the U.S. and any meeting between her and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, the third highest-ranking official of the U.S. government, because it seriously contravenes the One China principle and provisions in the Three China-U.S. Joint Communique and gravely undermines China's sovereignty and territorial integrity. We urge the U.S. to abide by the One China principle and provisions in the Three China-U.S. Joint Communique, not to allow Tsai Ing-wen's transit trip to the U.S., not to arrange for any meeting or contact between Tsai and U.S. political figures and officials. The Chinese side will closely monitor the situation as it develops and resolutely defend our sovereignty and territorial integrity.
Now, Tsai plans to stop over in the U.S. on her return from Central America, where she has met the leaders of Guatemala and is visiting Belize before meeting McCarthy. McCarthy's decision to meet Tsai in the U.S. was viewed as a compromise that would underscore support for Taiwan but avoid inflaming tensions with China. However, Xu Shouyan, the charged affairs of China's embassy to the U.S., told reporters last year that Washington risked a serious confrontation, no matter whether U.S. leaders visited Taiwan on the reverse. On Monday, McCarthy's office said the bipartisan meeting would take place at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library just outside Los Angeles. He had originally planned to follow the example of his predecessor as Speaker Democrat Nancy Pelosi, who visited Taiwan in August, and that visit prompted China to conduct its largest ever military exercises around the island. The U.S. said that reprisals by China over a visit by Taiwan's president would not alter U.S. policy, insisting that such stops are nothing new. Let's listen in.
Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen is transiting through New York en route to Central America. Taiwan has also confirmed that President Tsai will again transit through the United States on her return to Taiwan next week, this time via Los Angeles. The facts regarding this transit are clear. It is consistent with long-standing U.S. practice. It is consistent with our unofficial relations with Taiwan. And moreover, it is consistent with the U.S. One China policy, which remains unchanged. This transit is routine. We see no reason for Beijing to turn this transit into something that it is not, or to use it to overreact. Unilateral attempts to change the status quo will not pressure the United States government to alter our long-standing practice to facilitate transits through the United States. From the point of view of both deterrence and diplomacy, we are working to preserve peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait, which is critical to regional and global security and prosperity. This will require acting now to bolster Taiwan's resilience against PRC pressure. We have a proven track record of doing just that, from launching an ambitious new trade initiative to announcing around $5 billion in arms sales so far under this administration, including the largest number of arms sales in 20 years, and setting up efforts to accelerate delivery of arms to Taiwan.
The U.S. remains Taiwan's most important ally and its biggest arms supplier, despite switching its diplomatic recognition to Beijing in 1979. The U.S. stopover comes at a key time, with Beijing having ramped up military, economic, and diplomatic pressure on Taiwan since China came to power in 2016. U.S. media reported that around 20 U.S. lawmakers plan to accompany the speaker to the meeting in California. China has increased investment in Latin America, a key diplomatic battleground between Taipei and Beijing since the two sides split in 1949 after a civil war. Taiwan accused China of using coercion and intimidation to lure away its allies after Honduran Foreign Minister Enrique Reina and his Chinese counterpart Qin Gang officially launched relations in Beijing. Hundreds of Bangladeshi fighters were mobilized in the capital Dhaka to battle an inferno that raged through a popular clothing market and blanketed the city's oldest neighborhoods in black smoke. No casualties have been reported so far, but shop owners and the officials told reporters that the Bongo Bazaar market and 3 adjacent commercial precincts had been almost completely gutted. A military spokesman said in a statement that an Air Force helicopter had joined the firefighting effort. The market is a popular destination for cut-price Western fashion brands such as Tommy Hilfiger, selling clothes that were produced in the city's garment factories but failed to meet export standards. Distraught shop owners told reporters the blaze had left them destitute ahead of Eid, the Muslim festival marking the end of Ramadan and the country's biggest celebration. Australia said it will ban TikTok on government devices, joining a growing list of Western nations cracking down on the Chinese-owned app due to national security needs. Attorney General Mark Dreyfus said the decision followed advice from the country's intelligence agencies and would begin as soon as practicable. Australia is the last member of the secretive Five Eyes Security Alliance to pursue a government TikTok ban, joining its allies, the U.S., Britain, Canada, and New Zealand. France, the Netherlands, and the European Commission have made similar moves. Dreyfus said the government would approve some exemptions on a case-by-case basis with appropriate security mitigations in place. Cybersecurity experts have warned that the app could be used to hoover up data that is then shared with the Chinese government.
We noted the reports and has lodged solemn representations to Australia. China always believed that digital security issues should not be used as a tool to overstretch the concept of national security and abuse state power in suppressing foreign companies. We urge Australia to earnestly observe market rules and the principle of fair competition and provide a fair, transparent, non-discriminatory environment for Chinese companies.
And NASA unveiled the crew for its first human mission to the moon in more than 50 years, including the first woman and black man to make the voyage. The Artemis 2 flight is a prelude to returning humans to the moon for the first time in a half-century and an eventual mission to Mars.
It will be a 4-day journey, going 250,000 miles, continuing to test out every bit of Orion, going around the far side of the moon, heading home, going through the Earth's atmosphere at over 25,000 miles per hour, and splashing down in the Pacific. So, am I excited? Absolutely. But my real question is, are you excited?
I pray that God will bless this mission, but I also pray that we can continue to serve as a source of inspiration for cooperation and peace, not just between nations, but in our own nation.
this program. We are going, and I want everybody to stand.
We are representing our nation, and we're doing that in a very clear way. United to go explore deep space. And we cannot do that alone. We need the entire world to go along with us.
As my usual habit, I'd like to end the day on a positive note. Let's encourage and build each other up so that no one is left behind. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles. Stay in the news because we live in extraordinary times. Good night.